back with you today. Um, Nice to see your faces and nice to get back to reflecting um, on our sacred text. I love the way that our reading from Isaiah begins. Ho, everyone who thirsts. I've always loved that. Hear again those words from the beginning of our passage from Isaiah. Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. When we hear these words from the prophet Isaiah, I think most of us immediately comprehend them as words meant for someone else. Words that we're overhearing, but that aren't really for us. Words meant for those without any money, for the poor, for the needy, for the downtrodden. Yet as I read and reread this passage, I kept coming back to the first line as I tried to discern the intended audience. The audience appears to be, of course, precisely everyone. Everyone who thirsts. The fact of the matter is we all get thirsty, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So we are included in everyone, and we're all being invited to the waters. Now, when we get to the waters, of course, things become a little more ambiguous, a little more murky. It sounds at first a bit like anarchy. Those who have no money are invited to shop in a store that has no price tags. It isn't a giveaway or a free-for-all exactly. It isn't precisely divine charity. Those without money are still invited to buy. It's just that at the cash register, their purchases will ring up to zero. And to our capitalist minds, this just doesn't seem quite right. How about a heavy discount? No price at all, though, just doesn't quite compute. You can't buy something that's free. How does this all really work out in God's economy? Are the milk and wine free for everyone or just those who have no money? How much will it cost for the rest of us? And maybe this confusion is precisely the point. The text forces us to question how we price the basic necessities of life. It forces us to question the normalization of hunger and thirst among those who cannot earn enough to purchase ample food and drink. And since we're all invited to the waters, everyone, perhaps the text also hopes that we'll envision sitting down, eating and drinking together with those who have much less or much more than us. The waters become a place of encounter for people who can ordinarily avoid one another in the regular flow of life. Indeed, sharing a table with those who are very different than us is among the most socially transgressive acts that we humans can choose to engage in. At table, we become, at least temporarily, equals, eating the same food, sharing the same air, participating in the same conversation. At table, it is possible to come to know one another at a deeper than superficial level. We may hear stories of why some must spend their money on that which is not bread, and their labor for that which does not satisfy. We may come to better understand the pressures and stresses, economic and otherwise, that can deform our neighbors' daily lives. Indeed, the table is not only where we are fed, but also where our moral imaginations are nourished. The table is where we feast together on stories, on narratives of life that can provoke our impulse toward justice making. So what happens when we cannot gather around tables for a period of time? When the sharing of food and drink has temporarily ceased? When the opportunity for transgressive table talk is curtailed by concern for public health? You, like me, have probably not shared a table with anyone other than immediate family members for almost 5 months now. We have not been able to join with one another around the meal of bread and wine that is so central to our life of faith for just as long. And it no longer really feels like an interesting interlude, but rather an aggravating absence. We are tired of living in our little bubbles. We are tired of being cut off from one another. We are taking more risks in some cases because we feel that we just can't take the isolation anymore. We so desperately want to come to the waters. We hunger and thirst, not only for food and drink, not only for the nourishment of community, but also for righteousness. Indeed, it is painful not to be able to gather, to organize ourselves to make a difference at a time that is filled with so much suffering, at a time when so much seems to have gone awry. There has been much talk in a variety of circles about how people are hoping that things will be different when we are able to gather again in groups in the flesh, with less fear, with less personal protective equipment, maybe even over meals around tables. This kind of talk was at a fever pitch some weeks back after George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police and the nation erupted in protest. A quote from activist Sonia Renee Taylor epitomizes the spirit of those fiery weeks. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal. Other than that, we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. And yet we've already lost so much of this fervor. The heat of the moment has died down, but the injustices persist. And the ways that most of us live our lives haven't really changed all that much. Yet we still want something different. We want a different world, a different way of life. We thirst for change. But we keep on doing so many things in mostly the same old ways. And it seems that very little has changed or will change unless we get in better touch with our deeper hungers, with our deeper thirsts. Unless some of us get hungry and thirsty enough that we are ready to be asked some new questions. As a brand new first-time homeowner, the question Isaiah poses really struck me this week. Why do you spend your money for that which does not nourish, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? It seems that Luke and I could spend endlessly on our new old home, and there would still be so many projects left to do. We could make improvement after improvement, but few of them will probably make our home demonstrably homier or cozier or more satisfying to live in. It's already pretty great. And yet there is this almost relentless drive in me to update, renovate, rejuvenate. Where did this drive come from? And is all this expenditure of time and effort and money really going to satisfy me in the long run? Why do you spend your money for that which does not nourish, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? I wonder, what am I really most hungry and most thirsty for? And why don't I spend more on those things? Why don't I actually put more of my money in a significant and impactful way where my heart is, where my desires are, where my hopes are? For where your treasure is, there shall your heart be also. Isaiah's question encourages us to explore what it could look like to spend our money on what truly nourishes, on what truly satisfies, on what most gives life and creates the community we long for. Why do you spend your money for that which does not nourish, and your labor for that which what does not satisfy? An impolite question, perhaps, but an important one for those of us who dream of a different way, a better way, for all of us who hunger and thirst. Amen.